right. Yes, indeed. Well, we are back with a more Major League Baseball trade rumors to get to, and this one involves one of our own, Nika, Mr. Dylan Cease of the San Diego Padres. And I don't know about you out there, but I'm not so sad to maybe see Dylan Cease go at this point of his Padres tenure. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the issue is per se, but he just has not been very sharp this year. In fact, I'll even date it back all the way to the no-hitter and the Pirates game that came after that. When he was supposed to start in Pittsburgh after throwing the no-hitter in Washington, something happened when they got rained out that night.
The rain delay happened.
And it just never has been the same since then. Never been the same Cease. He wasn't as sharp in September, and obviously in the playoffs last year, a lot of Padres fans like to point to that. And yet, having said all that, I was really happy to see that the Padres were keeping him this year, because I felt like it meant and signaled to the rest of the locker room that, like, hey, we're still going for it here. We're still competing. You know, we're not waving the white flag by any means here, even though we have obvious payroll restrictions.
True, but pitching is at the premium for every team. So you can't just get rid of one and expect miracles.
No doubt. But at the same time, you know, I think I've fallen out of love a little bit with Dylan Cease this year. And one of the reasons why is because I just feel like he hasn't had as strong of a command of his basically two pitches. He does throw a four-seam fastball and a slider primarily. Occasionally, he will throw a knuckle curveball, but that's really just for show. He doesn't pitch that pitch a lot.
So his arsenal is limited.
His arsenal's limited, and I feel like he's really just become a two-pitch pitcher. And the problem with that is he's not working the corners and the edges of the plate and the strike zone very effectively, both high and low, and also left to right, side to side. So when you're not able to hit your spots, and when those pitches are leaking over the plate, you know, you're going to get hanging sliders and four-seam fastballs that are basically straight balls. Like, they're the straightest pitch you can throw. And just because it's fast doesn't mean that it's a good pitch.
Sure.
In fact, I would argue the harder you throw, the faster it flies out of the damn ballpark sometimes.
Yeah. I think if he is traded, the change of scenery will help him and the Padres at the same time. Depends what we get in return. That's the key.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of setup there before we get into this, because it does look like the Padres are actually taking a listen, at least, on Dylan Cease from what's being reported here. This article was in BleacherReport.com, and it's a little bit aggregated, as you'll see, but I like a little bit of what Brett Taylor did here, the author, and let's just get into it, shall we? The headline reads, Cubs have reportedly discussed a, quote, surprisingly available starting pitcher, and it's dated July 23rd, and the article starts, this would require some extreme creativity to pull off and satisfy both teams, but it sure is fun to think about the possibilities. And I want to give Brett Taylor credit here for just launching right into it in his article. In fact, so many trade rumor articles have so much exposition and setup in them, and they take forever to get into what the actual idea or rumor is. And here, Brett did the opposite. So hats off to you, sir. Thank you for launching right into it. And it is fun to think about these possibilities. This is from Buster Olney, and he works at ESPN. He's a baseball insider there. A surprise name has emerged in the starting pitcher market, Dylan Cease, who will be eligible for free agency at year's end, and that's a big part of this. Perception of other teams is that the Padres are intent on making a push for the playoffs and would use Cease to help fill other roster needs, which there are plenty, trust me. Here's where it gets interesting. Mets, AL East teams, and Cubs among teams that have talked about him. So the one interesting note there about the teams is the AL East, and that right now could be any of the Red Sox, the Yankees, and or the Blue Jays. I wouldn't put it past all three. You know, they're all looking for more starting pitching. In fact, most teams are. And if you're asking yourself the obvious question, why would the Padres quite possibly be interested in letting go of Dylan Cease? when they are trying to make their own playoff push, I would only argue it's because they feel like they have enough good / great starting pitching to get there. You look at you. Darvish is back pitching. He hasn't been great yet, but we'll get another crack at him later today. Michael King is throwing at least, and I think from his own mouth he expects to be back before the end of August. So he's going to be back. Nick Pivetta has been a great pickup for you and has been, deserving probably to be an all-star, but the Padres had enough brown and gold representing as it was, so he did not get the call to the all-star game. But as you can see, they have a strong top 3 remaining without Dylan Cease as long as they're healthy.
That's the big question, as long as they're healthy. And we will not know how Michael King going to show up after his recovery time.
I would say that's the big question mark in all of this. And if the Padres do wind up trading Dylan Cease, I would argue that they must feel strongly that Michael King is going to be back pitching pretty soon. Because I don't think they can go too long without having both Dylan Cease and Michael King pitching right now and expect to maintain their position in the playoff race.
No.
But no one's going to get there without any offense. So the Padres do need to get some more offensive firepower in their lineup. And I wouldn't be opposed at this point, like for the reasons I mentioned earlier, that I just feel like Dylan Cease hasn't been that sharp for whatever reason this year with the Padres. And maybe a change of scenery is due for him at this point.
I mean, he did so well when he came over from the White Sox that season 2 years ago.
He came over at the beginning of last year, actually.
Okay.
It was right before they left for Korea. He had to take his own plane there.
But he did well.
He did well, and he was a great pickup last year by A.J. Preller, no doubt about it. But at this point, now that you got less than 3 months left of this guy on your team, and it just makes me wonder, are you willing to let him go for nothing? Are you letting him walk away without getting anything in return here? And especially when I don't know if he's doing a lot of help to get us into October at this point. And it does make me want to throw the Cubs fans a little caution here, because I don't know if you are getting the Dylan Cease that you might think you're getting if you haven't paid close attention this year.
For the Cubs, it's still going to be an improvement. They do need a pitching.
Well, let's get on with it here. Brett says Cubs are among the teams that have talked about him. Well, yes, it appears that the Cubs have. The Cubs reportedly had interest in Dylan Cease going back into the offseason as their desire for a front of the rotation type arm actually predated the Justin Steele injury. That's interesting. The Cubs have had their eye on Dylan Cease for a while. In fact, he was drafted by the Cubs, so they know him quite well, actually. I think when Theo was there, that all was happening. So, Jed Hoyer is obviously a remnant of the Theo era, and he was there too. So he knows Dylan Cease. They know what they're getting.
And he's familiar with Chicago.
He's familiar with Chicago and the Cubs organization, having grown up there a little bit. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, I guess, that the Cubs would be a choice or a target.
Who do they get it back?
All right, well,
That's
let's
the
get into
question.
it. Since then, Cease, 29, has put together his worst season by the results. Yes, we just spoke about that. A 4.64 ERA over 108.2 innings since he was a rookie. Wow. Those results, however, come with some big caveats. Oh, here's the spin, Nika. Here's the spin. Cease's peripherals are just about as strong as they ever have been. Almost all of the extra damage has come via an inflated home run rate that may have some flukiness to it. Yeah, the flukiness is the ball leaking over the middle of the plate and not being painted on the corner or the edges where it makes it harder to hit well.
He's not a painter. He's a beekeeper.
Well,
That's the difference.
He needs to pick up that brush a little bit from time to time and learn to work the corners.
No, I know.
He knows it. He knows it too. And just 3 starts account for 40% of the earned runs he's given up all year. Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's been totally lights out in those other starts and sharp. Trust me, I watched him. The last one isn't good, of course, but the vast majority of his starts this season have been, perfectly Dylan Cease. And again, I got to question Brett Taylor here a little bit because as much as I enjoy your writing style, I disagree with you here that you have not watched Dylan Cease as closely as I have this year because he's been anything but sharp. He has not had pinpoint control of his only 2 pitches. And that is why he's been getting hit a lot harder than he has in the past. Anyways, he says that is all to say, yes, the Cubs should be interested in a Cease rental trade if he's made available. Well, great. I think so too. I mean, I'm a Cubs fan as well as a Padres fan, and I feel like this move may be beneficial for both teams. But until I see Dylan Cease start pitching like he was in the middle of last year when he threw that no-hitter against the Nationals, then, I'm going to wait until I see that to be like on board with this working out for the Cubs. But it's not to say that the Cubs shouldn't do it either. You got to take some chances and some risks with what's available.
Okay.
And you got to pray and hope that like a guy's going to get a boost by being in a different locker room or a different voice whispering in his ear, like, hey, you just need to tweak this and you're going to be great, and maybe it's just that little bit of confidence that turns a guy around. We've seen that before at the trade deadline.
Absolutely. The question now is what the Padres will get in return, because they do need to patch some holes in the pitching department as well as the outfield.
Well, and so that's where the next part of the article actually gets into, Nika. So
Nice.
Good call on bringing that up. Brett writes, but that's where things get a little funky.
Oh,
As we know
I don't want funky.
that the Padres are trying to win this year. That's right. We are trying to win this year, and so are the Cubs. And teams tend not to ship out front of the rotation arms when they're competing. The Padres would do so, as Olney suggests, and Jeff Passan said earlier, only where they could make their overall team better through a coordinated series of buying and selling moves.
Is that the fantasy Jeff Passan is talking about?
Yeah, I think it's one of those like you're going to get rid of a guy that you need, hoping or thinking that you'll be able to get someone else to replace him and still get the other pieces you need by getting rid of your front end of the rotation guy in the first place, Dylan Cease in this case. So that's almost impossible to actually pull off, writes Brett, though the Cubs could, in theory, help with some of the Padres' biggest needs, outfield bat and catcher. And yeah, just to put that out there, the Cubs have Moises Ballesteros, a catcher / first base prospect who is 21 years old and batting over 300 in AAA basically the entire year so far this year. And they also have Owen Casey, a outfielder who's basically being blocked by Ian Happ and Kyle Tucker and Pete Crow Armstrong. And there's also Kevin Alcantara. I don't know if he uses which pronunciation, but
Unrelated to Sandy.
He's unrelated to Sandy, but he also is a Cubs outfield prospect that they are highly touted on. So, yes,
options.
he is correct. The Cubs do have pieces that the Padres would probably be salivating over.
Okay. I have to see it on paper to believe this, really, because sometimes the prospects don't really translate one-to-one when it comes to
They don't, but
performance.
we also have seen, I think, Ethan Salas, the catching prospect of the future in the Padres organization, take a huge step backwards this year. He's had a big injury issue with his lower back. It's always scary when you're having back injuries as a 19-year-old catching prospect, I would guess. But for all intents and purposes, although his injury is being elongated, his time away, he is going to play fall and winter ball from what I've heard. So I don't know if the Padres would move him even, they might have to get what they actually really want to if they want to compete this year. They are definitely a flawed team.
No doubt.
And they have some definite needs. And I think they need to make some moves just to ignite some excitement back into this whole ball team.
Yeah.
Anyways, he writes, whether the Cubs could do so and actually improve their own team enough in the process would be the difficult question. I mean, I don't think you're going to get an improvement in the Cubs by bringing up Owen Casey or Moises Ballesteros this year to this team. Like they're not a part of this core unit right now. And there's no reason to think that they would need to become one unless somebody in the outfield has a hugely significant injury. But then you're putting a lot on a young player, right?
Yeah.
We've already seen Matt Shaw come up. And while he's been a little bit hot lately, I'll give credit where credit's due. He's playing well under the pressure of should the Cubs go out and trade for a third baseman too? And then which assets do you cash in for which needs is going to be the biggest question if you're a Cubs fan.
And he doesn't want to lose his position as a third baseman or be replaced.
Matt Shaw?
Right.
Well, of course not. And he's risen up, because we said the Cubs, should be maybe looking at third base a week or two ago, as Matt Shaw was not really hitting all that well.
Yeah.
Anyways, good to see him at least making a resilient effort here to stay a part of this Cubs playoff team. Even though they've fallen into second place this year, I fully expect the Cubs to be in the playoffs in October. They would have to have a monumental collapse. So
could happen.
Hey, it's not like it's not part of their DNA. Trust me, Heartbreak City has visited Chicago, the Windy City, many, many times, but I don't think it's going to be this year. They do have a good camaraderie as a team. Which is another reason why none of those outfielders are necessarily needed right now. And Cubs fans, I got to warn you, a lot of people don't want them to trade Owen Casey because they think Kyle Tucker is going to leave next year. And you should never put too much stock into prospects that have never touched Major League Baseball grass. And you never know. You never know what's going to happen. I understand the sentiment. I do. But if you have a chance to go for it this year and get, a really strong player, either at third base, like a Eugenio Suarez or a Ryan McMahon, or you have an opportunity to go and get a Dylan Cease or another front end of the rotation starter, you should damn well do it, especially with Justin Steele being out. All right, keep an eye on this one, though, as Dylan Cease is obviously exactly the kind of arm you hope to be able to add in a season like this. A guy who has the talent and durability to pitch throughout the playoffs and potentially win you several games. Nika, do you think Brett needs to go back and look at Dylan Cease's playoff record before and maybe revisit the final sentence of this article here before he publishes it next time?
I would say yes, because Dylan Cease doesn't have enough stamina to go into postseason. He runs out of juice.
If you go back to the Pittsburgh rainout last year, for whatever reason, Dylan Cease has just not been as sharp since that game. And I don't know what the baseball gods did to curse him, but his location has not been as sharp or as pinpoint. And I think he would be the first one to probably admit that to you. I think Dylan Cease is a stand-up dude. And I think, it's painful for me to say some of these things because I was one of the biggest advocates of him being a Padre and staying a Padre in the offseason. And yet here we are. Every season has a story of its own.
Yeah, we both were rooting for him when he got transferred to the Padres.
And I kept holding out hope here that he was going to turn it around. He was going to get going. And this is a pitching staff where he wasn't even the top guy. Michael King was there. Yu Darvish is lurking in the background. So, and Joe Musgrove is always around the team, even through this whole injury. He's always in the dugout. You have another top of the line starter whose brain you can pick and talk to. So it's not like this isn't a good core unit of pitchers. It's just baffling why Cease hasn't been able to
figure it out
quite right this year. Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck.
Good luck, Dylan. And we'll be watching this rumor very, very closely. And I do think he can turn it around for the Cubs too,
Absolutely.
just to be clear. So I think I'm a fan of this move happening, actually, dependent on if the Cubs are willing to give up one of those two young players for Dylan Cease as a rental. And that's a lot to ask. I get it. But at the same time, how bad do you want to win? The Cubs really, really could use another starter like Dylan Cease.